Welcome to MTG Friends. Thanks for tuning in. In this Commander deck tech, we're going to be talking about Atraxa, Praetors Voice, but with a twist. Normally, Atraxa is used in Super Friends builds. Super Friends as being, planeswalkers, all that kind of shenanigans because of its color base. But we're going to do something a little differently, and we're calling this episode Making Friends because it's an Infect deck. Oh yes, making friends. So you better either already be friends with the people you're playing with, or when you sit down, you might want to make a judgment call and decide, are you going to let them know your secret that it's Infect, or are you going to hit them with it and maybe have people be super unhappy with you and not make friends in the process? Well, I'll leave that up to you. But anyways, we've tooled this and we've tuned this up to be a super potent, super awesome Atraxa build. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, please hit subscribe if you're new. Please hit the like button, and we would love to see you at other episodes. Now, Infect, before we get into this, Infect, in case you're not familiar with it, we do have an another episode that is Infect. It'll tell you all about what this is. But in brief summary, Infect is if you hit them for 10 damage, poison damage, they lose the game. So it doesn't matter how much life they have or anything else. You hit them for 10, that's it. Especially with the proliferate mechanic. So let's just jump right in, and we'll start off by explaining the commander and then talk about the different packages we have in this. Alright, so Atraxa Praetors Voice. It is green, white, blue, black, 4/4, flying, vigilance, death touch, lifelinker. That's bad enough. Now throw in at the beginning of your end step, proliferate. So if they got a 1 poison counter, they now have 2. So this gets really nasty really quickly. All right, let's talk about the synergies and the packages we have that go with Atraxa. So we got removal, we got our ramp, we got our land, we of course have proliferate, we got the control segment, we got the draw, and we got the protection as well as shenanigans. Because, you always got to have some shenanigans. And then, of course, last but not least, we have the Infect package, which is what brings us all home. So let's just start right in to removal. All right, I'm always a big fan, and not just me, all my colleagues here at MTG Friends, we're big fans of exiling instead of destruction, so you don't have to deal with people's reanimation stuff in graveyards. So, for 3, you get an exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. Assassin's Trophy. The reason this is such a great card is it is destroy target permanent, not a non-land permanent, but a permanent. And they get a land in the process. That's okay. That's okay. Deadly Rollick. This is one of those newcomers. It's one of those great ones where if you have your commander out, it doesn't cost you anything, and you exile target creature. Despark. Oh man, exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. Well, because we're running Infect and a lot of little creatures for the most part, this is going to be really great board clear, so we can hit people in the face with some poison counters. Corrupted Resolve, specifically in here for countering target spell if its controller is poisoned, and we're in the control segment. Counterspell, of course run Counterspell. Cyclonic Rift, a staple in blue. Return target non-land permanent, or you overload it and return all of them, which is disgusting and awesome, and a staple in blue. Run this card because why wouldn't you? Fierce Guardianship, another one of those, hey, it doesn't cost you nothing if you have your commander. Counter target non-creature spell. Fuel for the Cause, an interesting one because it counters a spell and then proliferates. Ooh, fantastic. And dude, that artwork, let's take a moment and just really look at how cool that artwork is if you're not familiar with that. Mana Drain, oh man, there's a reason why this thing is expensive. And yes, if you don't have this card, don't go out and buy it just for this build. Find an alternative. There's plenty of other counter spells you can put in. Counter target spell at the beginning of your next main phase. Add X to your mana pool, where X is the casting cost of target spell. Well, of course, folks, this thing is in there because of that crazy, hey, next main phase, you get how much mana? Oh, man, that's pretty cool. All right, we are into the Infect segment. Blight Mamba, it's a 2-drop infect with pay 2 and regenerate. So it's sticky. Blighted Agent is unblockable. Corrupted Conscience. This is a really interesting one because it's 5 and you enchant a creature and you control that enchanted creature. Wow. So it is some serious shenanigans. This could totally be in the shenanigans section. And that creature gets infect. Cyst Bearer, it's a 3-drop 2/3 with infect. Flenzermite, infect, a 1/1 2-drop. Oh, and it's got lifelink. Glistener Elf, it's a 1-drop with infect. So you can get that poison counter stuff going early on. Alright, Hand of the Praetors, a 3/2 infect. Other creatures you control with infect get +1/+1. Whenever you cast a creature spell with infect, target player gets a poison counter. Now, if you notice, the infect creatures, they usually cost about 1 pip or 2 more than you expect for their power and toughness. But because they have that infect mechanic, it's not that big a deal. But that they did a pretty good job at tooling these cards back then, where the majority of these cards were created with the infect mechanic. Ichor Rats for 3/2/1 infect. When Ichor Rats into the battlefield, each player gets a poison counter, so you don't even have to hit them in the face for the proliferation mechanic to start taking action and take hold. They all get pointers. They all get poison counters. Notice it's each player, so wow, you can really start affecting the board with this thing. Great card for a 3-drop. Ichor Mirror for 2/1/1 infect. Whenever Ichor Mirror becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Phyrexian Crusader, he's got some seriously interesting stuff going on. Not only is he a 2/2 infector, but he has first strike protection from red and from white. Phyrexian Swarmlord, this thing has some serious action going. It's a 6/4/4 infect, but at the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 green insect creature token with infect onto the battlefield for each poison counter your opponents have. That synergizes really, really well with Atraxa. Plague Stinger for 2/1/1 flyer with infect. Priest of Norn, 3-drop 1/4 vigilance with infect. Reaper of Sheoldred, 5-drop 2/5 infect. Whenever a source deals damage to Reaper of Sheoldred, that source's controller gets a poison counter. So we are all about starting to stack these poison counters onto our opponents. Septic Rats for 3/2/2 infect. Whenever a Septic Rat attacks, if defending player is a poison, which is very, very, very likely, it gets 1/1 until end of turn. Skithiryx, one of the bigger bodies of this deck. The Blight Dragon, it is a flyer 4/4 infect. It's got Black Pit. Skithiryx, the Blight Dragon, gains haste until end of turn. So, oh man, you can swing in with haste for 4/4 infection, and it has regeneration for 2 black. Tainted Strike, target creature gets +1 and gains infect until end of turn. Viral Drake, infect for proliferate, so we get both mechanics going. And then Viridian Corruptor for 3. When Viridian Corruptor enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact. So it's got a bonus and it's got infect. So before we get into the ramp section, it is worth noting there is a huge infect creature card not in this build, and there is a specific reason. Blightsteel Colossus, he is a big dog. He is expensive to cast. He is indestructible, but he does not fit into this build because Atraxa is all about hitting them hard, hitting them heavy, hitting them quick, and mid-game, early game. Blightsteel, it is a fantastic, the coolest infect card of them all, but he is clunky and he is big, so we have not put him in here because there are other slots for more efficient, more effective stuff that goes and synergizes with Atraxa. Now, if you have different opinions or you're thinking you really want to comment, please make a comment down there. We love to hear from you guys. Get that dialogue going. It was painful to pull Blightsteel Colossus out of here. He just didn't make the final cut. A personal side note, Blightsteel Colossus is probably one of the, if not the most coolest, my favorite card of all time. Top 5 for sure. Top 5 for sure. All right, moving on, moving on. I digress. All right, ramp segment. Arcane Signet. Of course, you're going to run that card. Birds of Paradise. Run this card. Chromatic Lantern. This is because we're in 4 colors for the commander. We want to make sure that thing goes off. Dryad of the Elysian Grove. We got this to play additional lands each turn. That's so we can get some serious ramp going. And once we hit the land package, you'll see why we have some of these synergies going. Mana Crypt, of course. Who doesn't want a soul ring that costs you nothing? Just a little bit of damage. In Commander, not a big deal. You can easily swap this out for financial reasons. Smothering Tithe. This has quickly become, if not an auto-include, a serious consideration in anything being run by white. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with sack this artifact. This really slows down the board for the opponent because they have to consider each time. All right, am I going to pay 2? Am I not? Am I going to give this guy another token? Oh, man, I don't know. Soul Ring, run it. And now we specifically chose talismans instead of the signets because these have a little bit more wiggle room and just more efficient in this build. All right, this talisman is the green-blue. This talisman is the blue-black. This talisman is the white-black. This talisman is the white-blue. Talisman Fever, white-green. White-green. No, that was black-green. Green-white. And we're out of ramp. Now we're into the protection. This is an absolute auto-include in any green deck. Heroic Intervention. Permits you control, gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So this can handle anything except for an exile board wipe. Inspiring Call. An interesting one because it's a draw card for each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it, which is probably going to be every single creature you have out. And those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. Who doesn't love indestructible creatures? Teferi's Protection. Auto-include in all white decks. Maybe there's an exception. Hey, put down in the comments the exceptions you can think of. But this is a very strong consideration in any white colored deck for sure. It gains protection. It phases them all out so they can't even be exiled. Just nothing. It's groovy. Super groovy. All right, another one that's interesting. It's right out of Ravnica Allegiance. Maybe something you hadn't thought of, but man, this thing is great. It's a 3-drop creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. And with the addendum, if you cast this during your main phase, put a 1/1 counter on each of those creatures and they gain vigilance until end of turn. That thing is doing a lot of cool stuff for your board presence, man. It doesn't affect the poison counters, but putting the 1/1/1 counters on your creatures and giving them vigilance is super cool. And in a pinch, if you need to protect your board and it's not your main phase, you don't get the +1/+1, but your board still becomes indestructible. All right, shenanigans, and this card is chocked full of shenanigans. As of this recording, this thing is currently in standard, and it is part of the top meta decks. It is crazy. It's got landfall whenever land enters the battlefield under your control. Choose one. Create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, or more importantly in this build, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. Oh man. And we're running a lot of the fetch lands in this build, so that's going to be triggering a lot. All right, Reanimate. Boy, this thing is awesome. We're not necessarily running a reanimation deck. Actually, we're not. But this thing is great in a pinch. Put target creature card from a graveyard. That means any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Not a big deal because we're in Commander. We start with 40 life. Oh, man. And before we hit the land section, again, hit that like button, please. All right, moving on. Agadeem's Awakening. Also, what's quickly becoming a big staple in Black and Commander. Still in Standard as of this recording. It is a dual modal. It's got a bolt land on the other side where you can pay 3 life to have it come in untapped. It is not a swamp. It is for black mana. So that is something to consider if that is relevant for your builds in other decks. All right, return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that each have a different converted mana cost X or less. Whoa, man. I think this thing is definitely going to just creep up in value, especially once it rotates out of standard. All right, fetch land. Another fetch land. Pathway. We're running all the pathways that are relevant in this current build. There are going to be more pathways that are coming out. These are the dual modal lands in your hand that you decide which one you want when it hits the battlefield. This one's the green-white version. Shockland. The other version, black-white. City of Brass. This is because our commander needs 4 different pips. Whenever City of Brass becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to you. Ouch. That's okay. Pain land. That's okay. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Yes, indeed. Another pathway. Black-blue. Command Tower. You want to run this in any commander deck you have unless it's a mono colored deck. In mono, this doesn't help you at all. Exotic Orchard. Boy, you wouldn't really think this is that great, but it actually is, because add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Well, that's going to be a lot of different colors. All right, another fetch land. Force, 2 of them. Shockland. Shockland. Ink Moth Nexus. This is 4/1. Ink Moth Nexus becomes a 1/1 Blink Moth artifact. Creature with flying and infect until end of turn. It's still a land. So this is the VIP land in terms of infect mechanics. This thing you can get out early if you top deck it or get in your starting hand and start hitting people with it. That's where you have to chuckle inside, not externally. But boy, is this thing going to be a target the second it hits the battlefield. And as soon as it hits the battlefield, if none of your other infect stuff is out, they will instantly know that, oh, there's some serious craziness about to start happening. All right, islands, 2 of them. Karn's Bastion in here for the proliferate mechanic. You can tap it for 4 and proliferate. Another fetch. 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 Opal Palace. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Fantastic. But even better, if you spend this mana to cast your commander, it enters the battlefield with a number of additional 1/1 counters on it equal to the number of times it's been cast from the command zone this game. Oh, having a proliferate commander hit the battlefield and then proliferate so that +1/+1 counter becomes +2/+2 equal to the number of times it's been cast. Oh, that's kind of shenanigans in a way. All right, another Shockland. 2 plains. Fetch land. Reflecting Pool. Add to your mana pool 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. That's going to be very effective for you. Fetch land. Fetch land. 2 swamps. I don't know why it says snow-covered swamps. You don't need to be running snow swamps. Not relevant. All right, another Shockland. Fetch land. Shockland. Fetch land. Fetch land. All right, we're into the proliferation segment. Goes hand in hand with the infect package. When Contagion class enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and for 4 you can proliferate. So awesome for you, bad for your opponent. Makes that gap so much wider. They're getting -1 counters on their creatures. You're getting proliferation, and then it proliferates the -1s and proliferates your +1s. Oh, and proliferates the poison counters. Oh, this is a disgustingly awesome infect mechanic card that also allows some removal. Oh, talking about some broken craziness right here. Contagion Engine for 6. When Contagion Engine enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls. And then you proliferate. And then you proliferate again. Oh, I want to take a pause and just go, ugh. But because it's in our deck, we don't have to go, ugh. All right, Evolution Sage. Maybe one you hadn't thought about for proliferate. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. And we have so many fetch lands in here. This is going to trigger multiple times. So that landfall-y type proliferate thing going on. Great card, great addition in this particular build. Flux Channeler. When you cast a non-creature spell, proliferate. Oof. All right. Oh, talk about oof. All right, Sword of Truth and Justice. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from white and from blue. But more importantly, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control, then proliferate. And again, proliferate is choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. So proliferate is just so incredibly, insanely powerful with the infect mechanic. Tezzer's Gambit, 3 and a Phyrexian mana. Phyrexian can be paid with either blue or 2 life. Draw 2 cards, then proliferate. Thrumming Bird is a 1/1 flyer for 2, and it's actually really, really great in this deck. Whenever Thrumming Bird deals combat damage to a player, proliferate. Oof. All right, we're into the draw segment. Enlightened Tutor. You search up an enchantment card or an artifact, and you put it at the top of your library. You can easily swap this for Idyllic Tutor. That's what I say in every single episode we have that has Enlightened Tutor. Mystical Tutor. You can swap it for another tutor, of course. Another great tutor. Necropotence. It's worth noting that it is, if not an auto-include, a serious consideration in any black deck. And mainly because you can pay life to exile the top card of your library face down. And that's as many cards as you want. I mean, that's as many life as you want. So this thing is just super, super bananas good. Put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. Heuristic Study. Just give us a little extra oomph in terms of draw. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. Oh, one of the many hated blue cards by opponents. Sylvan Library, super janky, awesomely busted card. At the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand draw this turn. For each of those cards, pay 4 life or put the card on top of the library. Oh man, what a great, great card. All right, Vampiric Tutor, another great tutor. You pay 2 life to put something on top of your library. Worldly Tutor, similar, but you fetch a creature card and you put that on top. All right, now we've come full circle back to the commander, Atraxa, Praetors Voice. So, wrapping this all up, this is all about those amazing synergies with the infect mechanic, proliferate. Atraxa is just super duper powerful in this. Now remember, when you sit down to play this, if you're already friends with people you're playing with, it's going to be a fun surprise to you. You're going to chuckle a little bit. So, you know, go for it. But if you're playing with people you've never played with before, you're going to have to make that judgment call. Do you let them know? Do you go, hey, this is an infect deck. Are you guys cool with this? Give them the option to opt out and maybe you play something else. Or do you run the risk of ticking people off and being a huge target for all 3 of them to try to knock you out as quickly as possible? I leave that up to you, but this thing is definitely tooled to be super disgustingly, awesomely, super fun, janky. It's tooled really powerful, and it is just a great deck to play. You're gonna have a lot of fun playing with it. Certain people just love this kind of stuff. I happen to be one of them. So, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and absolutely put comments in the comment section. We want to know what you'll like to see. Put it in there. If you want to see more of this stuff, we're going to do more of this stuff. If you want to see something else, tell us. Tell us what you want to see, and we will cater it to you guys because you guys are part of our MTG friends, and we love having you. All right, thanks for tuning in. See you at the next one.